Well, I am excited to be at the Violand Executive Summit in beautiful Canton, Ohio. It's sunny now. I don't think it was sunny earlier, but it's sunny now, as you can see, maybe through the skylights. So we are here to record Chasing the Vision. We are on episode, is this 7? Oh my
So,
goodness, episode 7, which means you're going to see this long after it's recorded, but that's okay. So we are here to talk about a very timely topic and the reason to get an industry consultant. There's a lot of consultants out there, but there's a difference between having somebody from the industry and outside of the industry. Both of you come from different sides of consulting within the industry, different reasons, and then even from consultant to consultant within Violand, everybody has a different area that they are experts on. So that's what we're here to chat about. So JT, I'm going to toss it to you first and kind of give us your take on consultants and the opportunity that they bring in restoration.
well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, number 7 already, almost impossible to believe. Number 1, the industry is really, it's got so many good people in it. It's an absolute privilege to help and to work alongside Tim and the Violan crew. But one of the things that I've noticed over the last 15 years in this space is that things are moving so fast right now.
Mm-hmm.
We've got technology that's moving very fast. We've got a post-COVID workforce. We've got software out in the field. We've got, compliance issues. We've got all sorts of things that are moving quickly. And what I hear oftentimes is, I don't recognize the industry anymore. And so from my seat, a consultant can come in and help collapse a learning curve and some communication and really get people to a profitable state in a more efficient manner.
Yeah. So, okay. So JT, really quick, to clarify the difference between two companies here, Exit Strategies and Violand, when people reach out to you, what are they reaching out to you for?
Well, sometimes they don't even know, but sometimes they're just burnt out and they think selling is their only option. And that's not true. That's not, we'll talk about how we define success later, but sometimes they're ready to retire and they're just looking for good answers. So there's an array of issues, but many times it's not just a sale. There's a lot of other success stories in there.
And Tim, what about you? What is the main reason somebody reaches out to Violand? A restoration contractor reaches out to Violand?
I mean, there's a variety of reasons, Michelle, but they all kind of lump into the same buckets, right?
Mhm.
And it could be a growth need. Maybe they've gotten their business to a point where they just don't know what to do next, and it's for good reasons. Like they have growing pains and they need help with procedures and policies and the implementation of technology and all those other things.
Yep.
But they usually fall into one of those buckets we call either like strategy or execution. Strategy side of things is, okay, I've taken this thing to a point where I don't know where to go next and I need some ideas, some help, some guidance to get there. The execution side is usually more tactical in nature, but they can all stem from a desire to sell. I want to get out, or as you mentioned before, the business is moving fast. And things in business in general, not just the restoration industry, are moving fast. So sometimes I think business owners get overwhelmed and they're like, oh my God, now what? I just want to get out because my head hurts, when sometimes you have the opportunity to sit down, bring a little bit more clarity to what they do, and empower some people in their organization to help them out in certain areas, maybe where they're weak. And then all of a sudden it takes the edge off. But I would say the common thread that runs through all of it is pain. It could be a good pain or it could be a bad pain, whether it's a transformational growth strategy or whether it's a turnaround engagement where they have, some negative pain and the money just isn't there, or cash flow isn't there. But either way, we have to ease that pain some way. And that's why they come to us.
So I'm curious, kind of off the cuff here, what is the percentage of people, just off the top of your head, that come to you when things are good or come to you when things are bad? How many people are calling you when it's the bad day and how many people are calling you when it's the good day?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I don't know about you, but for us, I'd say we're privileged to work with a lot of clients that are on the good side of things.
That's good.
They've gotten themselves to a point where their business is growing, or it's stable, and they just don't know what to do next. We do unfortunately get calls for those turnaround engagements that says my business is failing and I need help. I need a lifeline. Those ones are a lot less, they're a lot less enjoyable on the front side, but when you're able to make that turnaround, it's certainly worth the success, the effort you put into it on the backside.
Yeah, I'll just add to this that when we define good, there's the seller's perspective of good, or the business owner's perspective of good, and then there's a buyer's perspective, and they don't always match up. So when you allow a business owner to see what their value is and the sort of rate their business on various categories and various pieces of it, We sometimes that's not always received well when a buyer has different expectations.
Mhm.
And so we deliver that with velvet gloves sometimes, but good is a loosely used term. But most people, we're fortunate that most people want to do the right thing in their business. And they're looking for good answers. And sometimes it's not what they want to hear, but it's what they need to hear. And I don't think either one of us mince too many words when it comes to getting a business on the right track.
Well, you can't. I mean, honesty is better,
That's
gets a
right.
lot further than sugarcoating it in PR answers.
Yeah.
Okay, so and a question for both of you and Tim, you hinted to this a little bit already, but what are some of the common themes that you see in people that are calling you? Is it getting paid? Is it we want to scale? Is it our profit margins? Is it our organization and we have problems? Like, is there a kind of a common thread, or is it kind of across the board? Everybody's a little different.
Everybody is a little bit different, but there are definitely common threads amongst service industry companies.
Sure.
Obviously, labor is an issue, has been an issue for years, will probably continue to be an issue even to the next decade. I mean, that's why we published, Forging Dynasty Teams, and we put together Culture Forge and all those things that we did. But I would say right now an immediate need is probably the cash flow side of things.
Yeah.
We've unfortunately been coming out of a slow first quarter for most of the industry.
Yes.
So people are cash strapped and they're a little bit concerned about what, an election year holds on the heels of what's going to happen in November. So those, I think, are the two big things that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, a common theme is probably two ends of the spectrum from my seat. One is that they're just tired and burnt out and they're hanging on by a thread and they know they need to do something. They just don't know what. And then the other end of the spectrum is they're actually ready to sell. And so as long as you're looking for the right answers in a timely fashion, it's not that difficult to get people sort of talk them off the ledge. Because as long as there's a game plan, it may be 2 or 3 years out, but as long as they've got a path on their exit ramp, so to speak, it makes going to work a whole lot easier. And you get to sort of build your confidence and replace a little bit of sanity that's been lost, along the way.
Are there ever underlying themes that you see of like this tends to be the root cause of any issues that your clients are dealing with on either side? Like, is there kind of this root issue that you can dial down to? And like, if we can solve this root issue, it's going to help us solve the rest of it. You laugh knowingly.
Well,
Great.
I don't know that there's a magic pill, but there's different root causes, right? There's always people want to solve leadership issues or accountability issues or culture issues. And I'm not an operational guy. This is Tim's lane, Violin's lane exclusively. But the theme is that they know they can do better. They know that there's money being lost. They know that they can have a better business or a stronger business, and it's within reach. And as long as you think that, answers are typically not that far away, and they're not complicated to get. It's not easy. It does take some perseverance and intentional steps, but any business can be better. I've been doing this for 15, 16 years in this space, and there's not a perfect restoration business yet, but some have been close.
Tim,
Yeah,
knowingly
I was
laughing.
laughing. Yes, I was laughing because just this week we discussed this very topic. We had some internal client review meetings as we do with our advisors on a quarterly basis, and we actually took two companies and we compared the two of them. And these two clients, they came to us at almost the same time a couple of years ago. Very similar size companies, not identical, but very similar service lines. They worked in similar markets, although two different geographic markets. But when you looked at the financial results over a 2-year period of time, side by side, it was a marked difference between one successful company and one that has kind of stalled, if you will, in their progress. So the common theme that runs amongst them is the owner. Like I will tell you 100%. That, and that's often the case with a lot of our clients. And it's not that the owners are ill-intended. They don't enter into the engagement saying, hey, I don't want this to work. But I think there's maybe a misunderstanding of the amount of work and time and effort that's necessary to become successful in that engagement. And what we find on the backside of that is two different viewpoints. We come at it saying, yeah, we can help you with all those things. We can ease that pain or fix those problems. And I'm sure you've experienced this too, where they say, is this possible? And you go, yeah, absolutely, it's possible. But what they're expecting is some sort of formula or algorithm or magic pill or silver bullet or whatever. And when you tell them they actually have to work it gets met with resistance or disappointment rather sometimes, where they say, man, I didn't know that's what I was signing up for.
Is there like a time span that you tell these owners that are like, they know that they need to step back or get other people, other leadership in? Is there a time period where it's like, if you can just really commit to this season and moving this direction for X amount of time, it's going to get better on the flip side. You are going to be a little bit more removed and have the help you need and going to be able to build and scale as long as you can weather this period of growth and change that it's going to take? Is there kind of a little bit of a time frame here?
JT, I'm going to let you answer that because you got that kind of 2 to 3 year ramp off ramp kind of theory. So
I just refer him to Viola and say, Tim can fix them in about 10 days.
you go. 10
Yeah.
days. There you have it.
No, it entirely depends on what the issues are. There
Yeah.
are some issues that can be fixed in a matter of months, and
Mhm.
others really are tough to fix.
Mhm.
There's pain points. Sometimes there's, let's say, a husband-wife team, and they're both working 50, 60 hours a week, and it's high risk for a buyer, for come in and lose, let's say, 100 years of institutional knowledge. It's tough.
Mhm.
And so to think of replacing one of them and delegating and training, that's a long-term fix. Let's call it a year and a half to do that right.
Mhm.
Well, emotionally, they don't have a year and a half. They want to do something different now. And so oftentimes you're met with some resistance on what expectations are. Other things are pretty easily to fix. They're easier to fix. Let's say cleanliness of financials. We've both seen companies that their books are a mess, and they're never going to add value. They couldn't even interpret their P&Ls. Well, if you get the right person on it and you help get them cleaned up, that's a 30-day fix, a 60-day fix. So it's all over the board on timelines.
Yeah, just to make a comment on getting the right people in place. And I want to come back to an earlier question that you asked about, the different types of engagements that we see on a regular
Mhm.
basis, and go back to that strategy and execution thing. Look, a lot of the pace of execution is on how tolerant that client is of the amount of work that they need to do.
Sure.
And we say, look, you can do these things, you can get your business to where it needs to be, you can straighten your books out, correct your cash flow issues, but doing it requires work. So from a strategy perspective, we can make the recommendations, we can do the research, the analysis, and say, yes, these are our things, our action items that need to come out of this. But doing it is a whole different story. And that's where the execution side comes in. Can we provide those services for you? Absolutely. We can come in and we can fix your books. We can come in and we can implement that software system. We can come in and we can institute these policies and procedures. But that's a very expensive process, that you need to have an ROI on the backside of that thing. So it's kind of like, fixing your house up or staging your house to sell it. If you're not going to get that money back out either in total value dollar wise or time of sale, then you're just making it look pretty to make it look pretty.
Okay, so that walks a good line into kind of the next question here of, because we're talking about the value of industry consultants, but there is a difference between a consultant and somebody that comes in and does it for you. You're here to consult and walk them through it, but not do it for them. So how do you both walk this line of like, especially when you have the clients that are maybe a little more on the needy side, like, can you just do this for me? Can you just help? How do you walk that line of like empowering them to do it, empowering them to make the changes, and being the person that walks alongside them versus doing it for them?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I kind of draw the parallel with understanding, first of all, there's a difference between consulting and coaching.
Yep.
And, as a consultant, it's your job to advise and direct, support where needed. But as a coach, you really want, you want the effort to be, and the onus and ownership to be on the client, and getting them, I think, in more of a long-term relationship to learn from what's being done. That way you don't have a dependency, because dependencies are unhealthy, right? I mean, you
Yes.
can't sell a business where you say, hey, I'm dependent on Tim at Violan for making all the decisions in my business, right? So it's my job then, as that operational side of things, to make sure that my client's educated so he can with confidence say, yes, these are the things I learned through that experience.
Mhm.
And now I'm able to implement it, on my own.
Okay.
But the execution, actually doing the work for them, that is a true role of consulting. And we see it happen a lot in larger, Fortune 500 type scenarios where it makes more sense for the organization to outsource those functions, at least
Mhm.
temporarily, so that they can get them up and running in a more, expeditious manner.
Okay.
And then maybe possibly down the line, you can do more of a train the trainer kind of deal where,
Mhm.
you know, you are imparting that institutional knowledge you refer to, and you're training the client to eventually take over that function on their own. But again, you know, that is it's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of cost on the front side.
Yes. Yeah, JT.
My lane is a bit unique because it's a lane not many business owners are familiar with. So if they do want to sell, they don't have any idea what they're up against. And some of my best calls, a business owner will ask, you know, once we exchange pleasantries, they'll say, I don't even know what to ask, just start talking, and I'm going to take notes. And I love that because there's no preconceived notions. There's been enough M&A activity out there the last few years that people have an idea how this works. But they'll start asking questions about their own business and how it works. And what's different is with a lot of what Violan does, they have an idea of how it's supposed to look. They just have to execute. And sometimes they don't know how to do that.
Mhm.
With me and exit strategies, they're not even sure how it's supposed to look. So I get to start from ground zero and take it from there. So when I paint the picture about the road ahead and how to make it better or how to make it more valuable and how many hundreds of thousands or millions we can add if they take intentional steps, because everything I do is educational.
Mhm.
I'm not on anyone's timing committee. I don't ever push a sale, but if we can take a company from 5 million to 8 million to 10 million or 15 to 20 to 25 million, and I can then paint a picture saying, here's the intentional steps. You know, if you go to Violand, here's what you should be asking about. Here's what I see as the issues. And if we can solve these, we can add this type of money to the bottom line, you know, in a 2-year, 3 or 4 year period.
Mhm.
Yeah, just to make a comment too, you know, we brought up the idea of financials, and what sometimes clients will come to us and we end up referring them to JT, and JT ends up referring them to us. And it looks like, you know, it's mutually beneficial, right?
Mhm.
But I want to use the example on the execution side of financials. I mean, it's a very simple step. When you talk about complex execution work, putting boots on the ground in someone's office to get
Mhm.
something done, it's really hard for you, correct me if I'm wrong, to value a business if you can't even get a financial statement.
That's right.
So then they come to us and say, hey, we've got, you know,
Yep.
this financial management issue that we've got to get corrected. And we say, yeah, you need to get your book straightened out. And we will give them specific recommendations. This is what your chart of accounts should look like. This is what your bookkeeping practices should look like. These are the procedures you should go through to close out a month, you know, to do all that good fundamental things to adhere to,
Mhm.
you know, the principles that are out there. And we'll make those recommendations, but again, it's up to the client to execute them. We can send somebody into the firm and say, look, give us your QuickBooks, give us your accounting package, and 6, 7, 8 weeks, we'll give it back to you in a state where JT can make some sense out of it and value this business for you. That's a great example of how you have an appropriate ROI
Mhm.
on that investment for that
Sure.
work that's being done.
Sure. But then hopefully they're moving forward and know how to make them look like that every.
Yeah, and look, in
after
some
you-
instances, like I think you alluded to it too, where it's not about selling. At that point, maybe they start to get a little bit better clarity on
Mhm.
their business, and they say, "Hey, I might want to hold on to this thing for a little while
Mhm.
longer because now I understand what's going on."
Yeah, one quick question. One thing I want to add here, you just brought up a great point. I define success in a lot of different ways. And one of my favorite questions is, if we got you from 70 hours to 30 hours and you got your sanity back, would you sell? And I get any range of answers to that. And when they say,
Yeah.
no, I just need to, you know, my wife has sort of put me on notice. I need to do
Mhm.
something different. I love that answer because it's not about a sale. It's about, let's just get your sanity back and use the business as a cash cow to go fund your real estate or house flipping, whatever else you want to do. But selling is not always the best option. And there are times I've talked people out of that because it's such a good deal if they keep it and just tweak a few things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the best parts of all podcasts is telling stories. So let's tell some stories. I'm going to actually flip it around though and start with, because we're going to start with like an example of a client that came in that was, well, I guess, okay, we'll do success stories. We'll start there. Somebody that came in maybe wasn't doing so hot. You've already kind of hinted to a few people, but came in, wasn't doing so hot and turned it around thanks to using a consultant and then also doing the work themselves, I'm sure. But we're able to be consulted and coached through from bad to good. A good example, a good story.
You want to start?
No, good.
Okay. There's all sorts of stories that we can tell on the success side. You know, we can both tell stories about
Mhm.
people who struggled. We fixed a few things, they're worth more. they sold for higher than they thought they were worth, or they kept it and kept making money. There's all sorts of those. What I like are the personal stories that we came to you, we were at our wits' end, it was divorce time essentially. I've still got the business. I've bought 4 more rentals the last 5 years. You're going to get the call when the time is right. We're working with Viola and things are good. Family's good. Kids are growing up. Soccer tournament this weekend. That's the best. It's the absolute best. And it's got nothing to do with a sale. And it's, when you hear that, it just warms my heart, because people think that we're out there just to fix businesses and, there's a human aspect to what we do. And our relationship with clients, it gets a little intimate. We become trusted advisors, and we understand how husband-wife relationships can work, and what's right and wrong, and how they lead and manage in their business. And when you really peel all that away and get to the heart of that individual and what's important to them, a lot of success stories out there.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to, look at the negative ones. You hate to talk about the train wrecks all the time, but you asked.
I did.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get to talk about the more poignant success stories
Yes.
where we had some growth, long-term growth over a period of time. But I one train wreck really kind of sticks out in my mind, and that's where a client had come to us maybe a little bit too late, and you could probably appreciate this too, where had you just called me 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, a lot of this could have been avoided, right? But we did have an individual who had a very large organization that worked nationally. And they had a couple dry years, they were primarily a cat team, where they chased storms, and there was a couple dry years there where they just didn't have it going on.
Yep.
And they were so specialized in the type of client that they worked for that made it even worse. So it was generally feast or famine, but the executives of the organization had got accustomed to taking certain liberties and living a certain lifestyle with the business. Well, that cash outlay continued to go on for a period of months that were longer than what it should have. So, I decided to agree to take on that assignment and work with that owner, but I made it very clear that you're going to have to do exactly what I'm asking you to do. There's no, if we're going to get through this, there's some very painful things that need to happen. We can get through this, but we can't have any of this. Well, I'll do half of that, or I don't think we should make as much of a cut in that. No, it's going to be, this is it. And to his credit, and his partner's credit, they did follow that advice. And I think one of the most rewarding parts of that, because now that that individual's out of the business now altogether, we're still friends and we keep in touch. But we had an event where my father was a guest at, and you always want to make your dad proud. So Dad, if you're watching this, then but he introduced himself to my dad, and his first comment was, "Your son saved my company." So from a reward standpoint, the money's good on the business, but that
That's
takes the
everything.
cake. That takes the cake.
Yeah. So then let's talk about success to success. I mean, companies that come to you when things aren't bad. We talked about that at the beginning. How many people come to you when it's still good and they just need help, or bad and they really need help? So success to success. Talk about a company that came to you when things were looking pretty good, but then you took them, like maybe JT in your instance is like, okay, maybe we won't sell yet. Like, let's hold on to it and we can maybe double, triple, whatever it is. And then Tim, kind of from the same side, things were going pretty well. And then you help them grow maybe beyond what they ever even thought possible in the business.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I've got a couple examples of that, and I want to talk about one in particular that is it is a startup to sales success story, right? So when you talk about why we do what we do and why we do it in this space, I've always thought that the restoration space in general these are salt of the earth people. I mean, these folks know a trade, they've worked with their hands, they understand human to human interaction. It is an emotionally charged industry for all of the right reasons, right? So, my first example, it looks at a couple that started a business in the middle of nowhere almost, because they were getting away from a life that they didn't want to be a part of any longer. And not only did they want to leave that past and create a new future, but the new future involved helping individuals that were stuck in that past that couldn't get out of it. In a matter of, the 5 or 6 years that we worked with them, that went from, a pretty well-run organization to a really run organization that ended in a sale, and the creation of that opportunity to then take the benefit from that sale and turn it around and use people that were in that need. So to me, that is the greatest story, to go from, what could have been a life going in the wrong direction to a life of purpose, and being able to do it from there.
Okay, so we have a special guest joining in the middle of this podcast, which is a first for me, and I'm very excited about it. So Mark Johnson from MA Restoration. I've known Mark for a while, and his wife Amy. We've gotten to have some fun in Captiva. I've done dinners and all of the things. So I'm excited to have you here. I'm going to have you kind of introduce yourself a little bit first for people who don't know you, and share a little bit about your company.
Okay. So I am Mark Johnson, and I own MA Restoration. This month it's 30 years in business for us. So we've been around the block a little bit.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a big anniversary.
Yep. We started the business in 94 as a custom cabinet company, and it's grown into full scale remodeling. And then we got into the restoration trades business about 2001.
Okay. And at what point along the way did you realize maybe we could use an industry consultant, and decided to reach out and find a consultant in the industry?
So, truth be told, my first consultant was around the remodeling industry, and I happened to come across him at a seminar they're holding at a local lumberyard.
Okay.
That got me introduced to the consulting world, and I soon figured out that Xactimate was a foreign term to him. So everything was Excel spreadsheets, and so I was looking for somebody that knew a little bit more about the industry and the Xactimate and the insurance side of things. And I ended up running into Chuck at a Strategies for Success class in Salem, New Hampshire at John Donne. So.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So what has it been like in the time? How long have you worked with Violan, and what has it been like through that period of time? What value has it brought to you and your business?
So the first consultant taught me how to run a business. So when I met Chuck, the terms and stuff that he was using for his part of the presentation already kind of made sense. So I kind of understood what he was talking about, but it was on the insurance side of things. So that was in 2011, May of 2011. So it's been
13 years.
13 years. Yep. That we've been working. So I guess for me, the benefit is, one, it holds you accountable to your goals.
Yeah.
So we write our goals every November, our business plan. And so when you have that call scheduled, that next call that you're looking forward to, you're going to make sure you have something done from the last time that you talked, and that's all pushing towards your yearly goals.
Okay.
So that's the first benefit. The second benefit is I don't need to reinvent the wheel. So if I have a plan, then I'm like, okay, I'm not sure, is this going to work or not, or is this a good idea or not? I have somebody to bounce that idea off of. And so having that confidence to go make that decision, it just makes it easier to go and move forward with that, versus, hey, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to paint the walls blue today and see what people's reactions are, or something like that. Like, I already know that I'm going to go and do whatever that next step is. And it's going to, I'm going to have the confidence to say, hey, somebody's already been there, done that. It's a good idea to do that.
Yep. So, okay. So really quickly, what advice would you give somebody who is thinking about reaching out and trying to find a consultant, but they're not sure? What one piece of advice would you give when it comes to consultants?
Get your ego out of the way.
Oh,
right. So a lot of us as business owners think that I got this, I don't need that. I got this figured out on my own. And there's a lot of them out there that probably have it figured out on their own. But for me, we're over 4 times the size that we were at the beginning. I never really dreamed of having a business to what it is right now. So I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the consultant, Tom, that we've been working with for the last 11 years. And again, it's kind of get out of your own way and just accept some help and follow what the plan is, and just makes life easier.
So you're also the reason Tom hasn't fully retired.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, Mark, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I always like it when business owners always strive to be better. And it's more helpful from my seat too, when they don't have to sell, when they think I'm exploring this, or we've turned down a couple offers, but my wife and I want to talk about this. I mean, maybe it's the right time. And when things are going pretty well, and you negotiate from a position of strength and not desperation, and you've taken the appropriate steps. One of the examples was in the Bay Area. Bill, a Viola consultant, was working with him. I mean, we essentially doubled the value of that company in a 14-month period. And that was exceptional. It's one of the best success stories. Another success story is a company out of Nashville that I put them at about 18 million. We got about 20 or low 24s for cash at closing, and then another 10+ million earnout on top of it, because we put some things in motion that showed some growth. And as far as I know, we're going to hit that. So there's a lot of positives to just striving to be better. And there's always ways to be better in this industry. It's such a fluid industry, and there's so many moving parts. But if people want to take those intentional steps, they're there for the taking.
Yes.
I think you alluded to a very good point, JT, and part of that means understanding potential. And a lot of times, I think when clients come to us, they don't understand or realize what the full potential could be. And
Sure.
until they start seeing things in motion and they start looking at the results in a disciplined manner. And the other example I've got of that is an individual who he jokes with me sometimes because his tenure as a client with Violand is almost as long as my tenure with the organization as well. So 14 years we've been working with this client. And when he came to us, he was a talented tradesman, cabinet maker by trade, eye for detail, and his dream was, I want to build a company that I can use as a vehicle to provide for my family, just to sustain a lifestyle, and I think they were around, maybe around 1 million, maybe not even 1 million when we first started working together 14 years ago. And and I didn't work with them personally either, but during that period of time, after putting all that good stuff in place, now the potential started to be realized. And that turned into, maybe it goes beyond a lifestyle and a means to provide to today. If you look at that organization, not only have they grown substantially at the top line, but the bottom line and the equity line of the business now isn't just sustaining a lifestyle or providing an income. We're talking about family wealth and generational wealth is, that is a golden trophy at the end of the road.
Yes. Yes. Okay. All right. Before we wrap it up, any words of wisdom for owners thinking about reaching out to a consultant on either side? I could see there being a little bit of fear as well, calling either of you. Like when things are good, it's I think easy to pick up the phone and make a phone call. But if things aren't going as well, it's like, well, JT's going to tell me my company's worth nothing, and Tim's going to tell me my company sucks and we need to close tomorrow. So
Well, time to wrap up this podcast, isn't it?
Right.
So words of wisdom, advice for people who are like, I really think I need to use a consultant. How do I reach out? How do I figure out who's right for me? Where do I even start?
You want this? You want me?
Sure. I'll
go ahead.
start.
You can start.
Very rarely, and I'll continue a little bit of humor here. Very rarely do I call somebody's baby ugly. Nobody wants that. Now, we may have to comb its hair, put a little lipstick on it, might pierce its ear, but very rarely are they ugly. I've looked at over 500 restoration companies the last 15 years, and 1 or 2 have been complete disasters, and they shouldn't even be open. Short of that, people are mostly afraid of the answers.
Sure.
They want them.
Yep.
But they're afraid they're not going to hear what they want.
Yeah.
And what we do collectively and individually is we want the best for those clients. We want higher top lines. We want higher margins and higher bottom lines, and all within the ethical, humane way of doing business, right? And so sometimes you have to deliver a little bit of tough news with velvet gloves. But when a client understands that we're all rowing the same direction and we all want the same thing, we get to go through those bumps together. It's a little bit of a emotional roller coaster. Anytime, whenever you green light a sale and a buyer recruitment and negotiations, it's an emotional process. And so our job is to look around the corners and sort of guide them through that process. But if I could pass along one bit of wisdom for this process, is just ask questions early. If we can help, we're going to help. If we can't, we'll tell you. But as long as you ask questions early, and the 1, 2, 3 years of your exit ramp, so to speak, make intentional and purposeful steps. Apply your actions in meaningful ways. There are hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars at stake if you do that right. And if you call too late and I say, boy, I know you're calling from a hospital parking lot, there's nothing I can do right now. We're not going to add any more value. And then they say, oh, I should have called you 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm just shaking my head because we both know that he's right. So ask questions early. That's the best advice.
Yeah, and I like the early part of that, JT, because quite often they wait too long. Even in a growth mode, Michelle, even if things aren't bad, if you've got growing pains, then reach out early. Our best clients that we work with over the years, the cycle, the courting cycle to work with those clients is oftentimes years long. And I think we both understand that. Those are the best clients. It's the guy that calls you today and wants to start working with you tomorrow that I worry about.
Yeah.
But I would say, as a piece of advice, if you don't want to call us, call someone else. Talk to your peers in the industry. Attend the conferences. Read the trade magazines. Get accustomed to the podcast. Listen to these folks. And everybody's it's not a one shoe, kind of fits all kind of deal. You're going to resonate with the way that some consultants approach things, and you're going to resonate with the way other things. And I think that pairing is probably more important for success than anything else.
Good answers. Okay. Anything else that either of you want to add before we wrap it up?
Not at all.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.